This is Rocky Snyder. At the tone, leave your name and message and I'll get back to you.
I'm from New York. You know, we learned some stuff in school. We learned a different language, and I chose Spanish. You got a few Latinas in your class. You're gonna want to know Spanish. They know English. You respond in Spanish. All of a sudden, whoop, bang! You're married, 10 kids.
Today's episode, I get a chance to sit down with Karen Litzy, physical therapist from New York, who's also the host of Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart podcast.
Yeah, now, of course, we're both in these hot spots with COVID right now, hence the Zoom meeting here. But what is it, at first, what has it been like for you dealing with the restrictions that were applied in the Manhattan area? And have you been able to still see patients, and how is that working?
Yeah, so when Manhattan and New York City, I should say New York State, we sort of went on quarantine and on lockdown on March 16th, around that day. And so we're almost 6 months into it, I guess. But in the beginning, it was a really swift learning curve to incorporate telehealth, telemedicine, into the practice, which I had been doing a little bit here and there, but nothing to the extent that I'm doing now during these COVID times. So really being able to transition a good number of my current patients that I was seeing onto telehealth was really helpful. And that certainly kept me going over the months that we were in lockdown. So we were, as far as seeing my clients in person, that started in June. So
okay.
It was March, April, May. So 3 months of seeing no one in person and seeing everyone via telehealth. And I was also able to get new clients during that time and see them only via telehealth. So it was very helpful. It was instrumental. And patients, everyone says, how can you do physical therapy over telehealth? Do people get better? Yes, you could do physical therapy over telehealth. And yes, people get better.
Well, I imagine that some of your skills were honed and sharpened, if you will, because the fact that you are limited to, well, you're not doing any manual work, which is beyond my scope of practice. So for us to transition online, I think we, as strength and conditioning specialists or movement specialists, we didn't have that to contend with. So, you tell somebody to ice here or do something, I imagine, but what was it like for you? What did you notice in your own skill sets improved because you were forced into this new vehicle or venue?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting with telehealth is I would be able to see the patient from a different angle. So if they were on the ground, I was looking kind of from a bird's eye view, which normally I'm not standing over someone and looking. I mean, it's a little menacing and weird to do in person, but to have that view from the computer, I thought was really very helpful. So I think it really honed in on my skills of observation. You really have to be very, very good with your line of questioning and be a very good listener, which I think I already was. And then it really helped me to become more skillful in describing movement, describing exercise, and really explaining to people where you might feel something. Do you feel this? And really asking for more feedback from my clients. So that's all been very helpful. And then I've continued to use those skills and transition them back into my practice of seeing people in person, which I had started doing once New York City moved into phase 3 and, things started opening up again. Then I felt more comfortable seeing people in person, but I'm still using these skills of observation, asking more questions, asking how people feel. And I mean, I didn't do a lot of manual work to begin with. So for me, it wasn't that difficult. But yeah, I found the telehealth to be very helpful just in my development as a clinician.
Oh, sure. I can appreciate that for sure. And with the clients that you were seeing during that period where you had to do it from kind of remote access, were there certain categories of clients or patients that you just, it didn't make sense to try and do that? Or were you able to pretty much address the needs of everyone to the degree that you could?
I was able to address everyone, again, like you said, to the degree in which I could. I didn't have, at the time, it's not like I was seeing any post-operative patients because there was no elective surgery anyway.
Oh, good point. Very good point. That's how I
So
was
it
kind
would
of
be
thinking
like,
about that.
well, sure, if someone had like a rotator cuff repair and they can only do passive range of motion, that's obviously a little difficult to do over telehealth, but no one was having elective surgeries anyway. So
Gotcha.
elective surgery started opening up in June as well. So it was just a natural progression. So now I did see a couple of people post-surgical since things have opened up, but that might have been a little bit more challenging to do via telehealth. But again, it wasn't there anyway. So it was kind of a non-issue.
Certainly. All right. So we'll fast forward to when the restrictions got lifted, and now you're able to see people. Um, do you work by yourself, or do you have a team of others in your company that you work with?
Yeah, I have one other therapist that works with me as an independent contractor. So he's also seeing patients as well, um, and mainly online, of course. So he sees some patient visits per week, and obviously, as do I. And since things have opened up, I'm probably now 60-40. So 60% of people I am seeing via telehealth, and 40% I'm seeing in person. So the telehealth part is still a little bit more than in person.
And just a little backstory here. You became a physical therapist when?
1997.
97. All right. So you've been doing this for some time. Where did you go to school? And is it in New York? I'm not sure if it's nationwide or just California, but you have to have a doctorate in physical therapy these days in order to practice. Is it the same in New York?
Actually, you don't need a doctorate to practice because there are people who, when I first graduated, I graduated with a master's degree. I went back to school to get my transitional doctorate in physical therapy. So I do have my DPT, but there are certainly people who graduated with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, as long as they pass the national examination, the National Physical Therapy Examination Boards, then they are licensed to practice in any state. So people who maybe graduated 20, 30 years ago,
Gotcha.
they may
They're
not have their
grandfathered
doctorate,
in.
but they can still practice. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. And so I just want to kind of follow your path to where you are now, because the way in which you do physical therapy is very encouraging to me after dealing with so many other physical therapists for the last 30 years and trying to work with them to help their patient, my client, so to speak, in the team approach. You do something a little bit different, but how did you, first, what made you decide on physical therapy? I guess I'd like to know that.
Yeah. So the program that I went to was you entered into it was a 5-year master's program. So you entered in right after high school and graduated with your master's in 5 years. So I didn't go to undergraduate school first and then decide to be a physical therapist. It was sort of right out of high school. And I was always like really active I was an athlete and very active when I was in high school. And there was a physical therapist in my hometown. I'm from Pennsylvania. And so I sort of did some observation hours with him, and I really enjoyed it. And I knew I wanted to do something in the medical field, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a physician. So I thought, well, I'll go to PT school, and if I want to be a doctor, I can. And if not, then I'll be a physical therapist. So that was kind of my thinking. And when I started going on my clinical rotations in college, I realized, no, I think I definitely want to be a physical therapist. So I stuck with that and did not go to medical school.
So at that time, we're going to take 97 there. And physical therapy, the typical physical therapist was very, I will say, symptom based in the approach. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, yes. And I think that what you're seeing now over the past 25 odd years is a migration from what we call a biomedical model of care within physical therapy to a biopsychosocial model of care. So the biomedical model of care means that you pulled a muscle, it's only your muscle that's causing pain. We fix that muscle and you're better. So it's sort of like we're just looking at the biological part of the person. Using a biopsychosocial framework of care, we are taking in the biological part of that person, the psychology of what that person thinks, where their mind is around their injury, around their pain, and then the social part of it, looking at social determinants of health, looking at social support networks. So all of that comes together to make this person, this client that we're seeing in front of us that is normally coming to physical therapy because they have some sort of pain somewhere, they had an injury, they had a surgery. And so we want to look at them from a really holistic picture. So I think you're seeing that migration of a strictly biomedical model into something's out of place, we'll fix it, to a biopsychosocial model of tell us what's going on. Tell me, are you sleeping? What is your nutrition like? What is your social structure at home? Do you have support? Do you have, tell me a little bit more about your pain, really trying to understand not just the biological part or reason or root cause, if you will, of someone's pain, but instead looking at that person as a whole and seeing how many factors can we throw in this bucket that is contributing to the person in pain in front of us at the moment we're seeing them.
Well, that sounds amazing. However, you just threw in a whole bunch of stuff into that bucket, but the average physical therapist in a clinical setting has maybe 25 minutes, maybe if they're lucky, 45 minutes. So it's not very conducive to a very holistic or wholly integrative approach as you've just described. So the chance is they're going to stick with the biomedical approach, wouldn't you say?
I think in some cases, yes. I think now what you're seeing, especially in a lot of, I'm not even new graduates, but in a lot of physical therapists, is that you're seeing that shift. It's a big ship. It takes a lot of time to make that turn, but the shift is definitely happening. And when I look back on my career from when I started until where I am now, I am definitely seeing physical therapists of all ages trying to move that ship a little bit. Now we do have, because physical therapy is part of the medical model, insurance does definitely play a big role in some physical therapy clinics, because you're seeing people, they're getting reimbursed by their insurance company. Reimbursement continues to drop, as with everywhere else in healthcare. So you have to see more people per hour and just to keep your doors open. And I don't fault physical therapists for doing that, because you got to keep your doors open. You may have employees that are depending on you. Your community is depending on you to be, a place of healing. So you have to do the best you can with what you have at the moment you have it.
Well, and that's just it.
Very difficult. There's no question. And I think what happens is you have to be able to be a skilled clinician in order to weave some of these things into your practice, and it might be homework, it might be pre-screening questionnaires, outcome measurements, things like that, to give you a better picture of that person before they even come in the door. So on our part, on the physical therapist part, it's more work because you're sort of researching your patient before they even come to see you. So it might be more work up front, but I think in the long run, it'll give you a better idea of where that person is. But it's work, it's hard. And, and I feel for the patients who are seeing 14 to 20 patients a day. It's very difficult. It does lead to burnout. And, there's got to be a better way to make this system work. There are people far smarter than me that are probably trying to tackle this. It is certainly not me that's going to tackle it, but I can really empathize with the therapists who are in that position of seeing 14 to 20 people a day. It's very, very difficult. And for the most part, do people get better? Yeah. Could their experience be more robust? Probably. But that's where, you have to create partnerships with other people in your community to help these patients along.
Well, I can tell you of the physical therapists that I am in contact with, the ones that are the most effective, that explore continuing education to the nth degree, they have transitioned out of that clinical practice because they are so bound up by their time parameters. They want to do so much more that they've actually either just dropped insurance carriers. Maybe they have Medicare still, and maybe they're seeing a few people like that, but most of it is out of pocket with the patients that come and see them. And some have actually dropped away from the brick and mortar, as I understand, like yourself. And now you're traveling to your patients' homes so that you're accommodating their needs to some degree. You don't have to deal with the expenses of running a physical clinic, so to speak. But that's the trend that I see going on. And the ones that unfortunately, and not to come hard down on physical therapy at all, because I can slam gyms and personal trainers with twice as much vim and vigor. But I see the people that are sticking around in those clinics that are, you say they're on the verge of burning out. I mean, they're either going to burn out, they're going to transition on to what you're doing and like home visits and so on, out-of-pocket expense or payments, or they're just going to become the dinosaurs and conform to the very narrow kind of protocols that old-fashioned traditional physical therapy has laid down, which, yeah, it could be effective, but it's really a temporary fix of what is really the underlying problem causing carpal tunnel or rotator cuff or low back problem. Rarely does X ever mark the spot. It's going to be something else that the body is trying to integrate and manage its mass against gravity and so on. So tell me about your journey out of the clinic, if you were there to begin with, and now where you are now, where it sounds like you're traipsing all over New York City. Like, what's your territory? How far do you go? You go all the way up to Albany, Great Lakes?
No. Now, of course, with telehealth, it's actually opened up quite a bit because I can see people in a couple of different states now because I'm licensed in a couple of different states. So telehealth has been really great for that. And in New York, pretty much in Manhattan, I'll go like one stop into Queens or Brooklyn. It just depends on how, just time-wise, Since COVID started, I really have not been taking public transportation. So I'm trying to sort of keep things in and around, where I live. So maybe I walk a mile or 2 miles or something like that, but not walking like over the Brooklyn Bridge or anything. So that's been a little bit of a restriction because of COVID. I'm just still a little gun shy about taking public transportation. But yeah, I worked in traditional clinics. And for the most part, I had really good experiences. I worked in clinics where I saw patients every half an hour to 45 minutes. So I was really lucky in that regard, I guess. I never worked in a clinic where I was seeing multiple people at one time and had to, do that. So my experience was quite different because I had worked for owners who that was really part of their mission, was to listen, we're going to treat half-hour treats are really good, 1 hour long evals. So I worked in clinics that really made that a priority. And they did it, and what happened was I just was getting requests from people to be seen in their homes. And these were maybe requests from like friends of friends or friends of relatives who lived in New York. And so I just started building that side aspect of my business up and went from working full-time to part-time, and then from part-time to even less than part-time, as my home visits grew and grew. So that's kind of how my business started. So it's kind of came about organically. Along the way, I was able to make really great partnerships and friendships with people that are still great referral sources for me. And that's just, so it wasn't like I dove in with 2 feet. It took several years for me to feel comfortable to say, okay, I can leave the security of this part-time position and really go all in on my own practice. Because, I live in New York, it's expensive. So you have to pay for things. You need a roof over your head. And so that's kind of how my business developed, but it was very slow and organic. And for me, that was perfect. I was in no major rush. And I just wanted to make sure that I was able to, continue to live a good lifestyle that I felt I was comfortable with. And I was able to do that with that sort of side hustle moving into a full-time gig.
Yeah, that's really quite a cool kind of progression. And I'm curious, you spoke about building a team, and this is where I'm going to slam my industry of strength conditioning, is we're horrible at that. I mean,
Oh, really?
oh my gosh, honestly, here's an example. I presented to a whole bunch of orthopedic surgeons not too long ago, telling them about the kind of work we do in a post-rehab, a pre-surgical conditioning aspect for their patients, and the approach we take with posture
Yeah.
and gait and so on. And I put out a little questionnaire to the office staff and the surgeons, and just a few questions. One of them being, do you refer to, do you have a network of strength conditioning specialists or personal trainers? Do you have any type of referral with them? And if not, what is the reason? And all of them said no. And the reason was, we don't know who's out there. So that tells me that the personal trainers in the community are not reaching out to the medical community and trying to create a bridging that exists of this
Yeah.
gap between actually somebody who sees you, who has been cleared to return to activities of daily life or sport, whatever the case may be. And then, of course, you're going to provide them with guidance after you're done. You'll give them some type of program in
Right.
which to follow. But that program's only going to take them so far, and they're going to adapt to that. And then if they really want to go beyond that, they're going to need a new program. And so that was the problem, is that there wasn't this continuation after, say, physical therapy is over. Fortunately, we recognized that kind of early on, and we've got a pretty tremendous network of chiropractors, body workers, or manual therapists, acupuncturists, orthopedists. We're actually considered part of the total joint replacement program in the local hospital, so that after people are done with individuals like yourself and getting the post-rehab then or the post-surgical rehabilitation, then they're offered to come over and see us. So long-winded, here you go. But what kind of team do you have around you? And has anybody, like a meathead like me who lifts dumbbells, lives in their pajamas and can only count up to 10 at a time, who comes over to you and says, hey, I want to be part of your network?
Well, when I first moved to New York City, I actually worked in a gym. So as a result, I was able to meet a lot of really great personal trainers, strength and conditioning specialists, Pilates, yoga, nutrition. And that was 20 years ago, and they're still all my friends, and we still all refer to each other.
Oh,
So
that's
if I
great.
have a patient who, is I might have worked with them for a year after a complicated knee surgery, and they are ready. They want to get back to like higher level lifting, and we can't do that in their home because they don't have the capability for that. And well, some people do. Some people in Manhattan do, but not many. So I'll say, well, tell me exactly what you're looking for. So they tell me, and then I'm able to go to my network of friends and say, I think my friend Sid would be perfect for you. So here's his information, and he works at your gym. Awesome. So then they hook
Great.
up, and then Sid and I talk on a regular basis. We are constantly touching base with each other about this individual. And that's the best part, So, and to this day, I still will work one off with that team, that client of mine and that fitness professional. And so I always feel so lucky to say, oh yeah, okay, what are you looking for? Perfect. Here's the perfect person for you. Oh, you want someone to come to your home to do XYZ? Great. Here's the person for you. So I kind of came into New York City working at this gym, which is a big gym with tons and tons of employees. And the majority of them are still here and doing that work. So for me, I have this group of friends essentially who I can refer out, and then I've also been able to make connections with some fitness professionals like in LA. So when there's this one fitness guy in LA, or just in LA and New York, but so he referred one of his clients who just had an ACL reconstruction that he was treating, which I didn't quite understand, but anyway, because it was like a fresh Achilles tendon repair that I was like, well, that's odd that they're doing strength training, but maybe it was just like upper body stuff. So he referred him to a personal trainer here, and the personal trainer's like, yeah, man, he doesn't need a personal trainer. He needs a PT. And here's the name of someone that'll work with him. So again, just having these relationships and being able to build these relationships. So when people kind of float through New York, I can see them while they're here for like a week, and I'll just go to their hotel.
And your answer doesn't actually surprise me. And I would have been surprised if it had been different because, one, you're in New York. Yeah. And then actually, you just mentioned LA. And we can throw in Boston, Chicago, and San Francisco for that matter, maybe Orlando and Dallas, Fort Worth area. Yeah. The major urban areas are going to be more progressive in general. You're going to have a greater concentration of professionals. So the likelihood of having an amazing network like what you've just described built up over the years is going to be a lot more. Probably it's just going to be a higher chance of that happening than, say, in the outskirts, in the suburban, or even further out toward the rural stretches, right?
Yeah, no question. So I think if I were in those locations as the physical therapist, I wouldn't wait for those professionals to come to me. I would go to them. So if I were to move to some small town in Pennsylvania, like where I'm from, I would go to the gyms in the area. I would go seek out these different fitness, different nutrition professionals to introduce myself, to ask, what do you need help with? Can I do anything for you? What can we do? I see like a collaboration here. What do you think? So I think it's incumbent upon at least the physical therapist to reach out to fitness professionals, because we all have stuff going on. We're all busy. So someone's got to make the move, and sometimes it's a little bit easier, I think, when it comes from the therapist to reach out to the trainer to be like, hey, listen, like I need your help. I would love to have someone that I can refer my patients to after they leave me. Tell me a little bit more about what you do. And that's how you that's how you create a partnership, a friendship. You meet for a coffee, meet virtually, but do what you got to do. But you have to be the one to put yourself out there and make those connections, because otherwise it's not going to happen because everybody's busy.
Exactly. And, to slam my own industry a little bit more, you just mentioned you get a trainer who travels between New York and LA, and he's taken it upon himself without knowing the details here, but it sounds as if he's going outside of his scope of practice and is trying to do a lot of rehabilitation, which unfortunately we're going to find that with the corrective exercise movement that is going on currently in the fitness industry. Suddenly, people learn that, if I can, say, in a stupid example, activate their glute medius, their knee pain goes away. Oh my goodness, I'm going to activate everybody's glute medius and I'm going to be the star of the show here because I'm dealing with knee pain. Who needs a physical therapist? I'm like, oh my gosh, that could be the furthest thing from the truth. So there's a whole bunch of people out there thinking that just because they understand a little bit of joint mechanics, that they can solve everyone's problem without the help of a professional network of.
Yeah. And, and I would say, I on my podcast, I did an interview with a woman, Stephanie Nikolic. She's like a high performance coach for entrepreneurs. And she said something that really stuck with me. And she said, if you try and do it all, it'll keep you small. So the moment I would argue, and I would say to trainers and to Pilates and to PTs and to everyone, if you're trying to keep everything in house and you're not out there trying to widen your network and meet more people, that in the end, you're going to stay small. It's reaching out. It's making that connection. So if you're a personal trainer, making that connection to your local physical therapist, because that local physical therapist is likely to send you a lot of clients.
Exactly.
Unlike
golfers. I don't know if you mentioned on your website you have golfers that you work with. They are the worst. I'm just going to slam golfers right now. And you know why? Because I have a whole bunch of tennis players. I've got some handball players. I've obviously got surfers in Santa Cruz. And you get somebody feeling better and they're moving their bodies and suddenly pain is kind of going away because they're actually moving their bodies the way they should. And they go out and tell everybody, because tennis players need people to play with. You can't just play one person because the ball never comes back. But golfers, they're the bane of my existence. I went down to Titleist Performance Institute and studied with all those guys and came back and thought, oh, I'm going to take it and go to the one golf course at the other. No. You teach a golfer how to improve their game. You are now their secret weapon.
I know they don't want to share it.
They won't share it, damn it. So have you found the same thing?
Luckily, no, because by the time I also am a Titleist level 1.
There you go.
But the reason that I did it was because I was getting an influx of golfers to come and see me, and I really wanted to understand the swing more, understand the jargon and the lingo, and understand why things are happening at what part of the swing, and can I analyze the swing correctly, and then allow myself to give them the right exercises. I'm not there changing swing. That's for the golf pro.
No,
I'm
exactly.
there to look at their swing and say, all right, so the golf pro feels like you're swinging it the way he feels or she feels you could. So let's look at this from, mechanical standpoint and everything else and try and figure out why you can't. So that's my role. So I did it just so that I could understand the lingo. But I will say, having that little Titleist on my website brings in a lot of patients.
Yes.
Talk about people, like I had a guy who came in he was just in New York for business from Toronto, and he had hurt his knee, and he's like, oh, I noticed the Titleist thing on your website. And so I started seeing him like at the hotel, in the hotel gym that he was at. So, that Titleist came in really handy.
It does. And also the way in which they're looking at the mechanics of the body, rotation, flexion, extension, lateral flexion, and so on, everything that you're going to find in a golf swing actually carries over to every rotary athlete. So it really helped out for anybody, not just a golfer, but baseball, tennis, anything where you're turning your body, which for the most part is just about any sport you can think of, any kind of throwing mechanics, whether it's water polo or anything else. So it was a really nice addition to the toolkits. Speaking of toolkits and assessments, what tools do you use? What are your primary go-to protocol or methodology for assessing assessing your clients?
I do a very long client initial evaluation interview. And during that, I just try and ask a lot of open-ended questions and really kind of dig as deep as they'll allow me to. And then from that, the patient will tell you everything that they need. And so for everyone, it's a little different, but I start out with a really comprehensive interview, and sometimes it could be a half an hour, or I'll talk to them ahead of time for 20 minutes and interview them as their sort of free consultation, so that when I get to them, I'll just go over, so okay, this is what we spoke about, last time. Is all this correct? And then I'll say, well, you said this. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? And once they start speaking about what's going on and what their restrictions really are, then I'm like, okay, I think I know what's going on. And so then it's just plugging in the right evaluative tools, whether it be assessing strength or range of motion or gait patterns or movement patterns. But once you listen and you ask those questions and try and get as deep as you can, as the patient will allow, you know exactly what to test. You know exactly what to look for. You know exactly where to go. So for me, the eval is all about the interview and what is the patient telling me.
And I'm sure you'll attest to this, but finding out their health history in terms of injury, surgery, and all those experiences in their life are basically a culmination to where they are at that moment. They've had to endure, adapt to their environments and these experiences. But how often is it that you have found, I know you probably have, that you're working with somebody who hasn't let you know about one thing or another because it probably didn't come to mind, and then you start working them in a specific movement and suddenly they go, oh, you know what? I forgot. Yeah, I got shot in the head. I forgot all about that. Something like that. It does, doesn't it? It's amazing how many memories are stored within movement. Yeah, that's fabulous. So tell me, Karen, you help a lot of physical therapists out. I mean, not only in your podcast, but your whole approach, you're I won't say promoting, but you're helping guide other physical therapists with the type of approach that you're doing in the home-based field. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how is that laid out? So because I do have movement specialists, but also physical therapists and
Yeah.
sport coaches and so on listening to the show. So if there was a physical therapist out there who feels kind of locked into a dead end cornered place where they're going, I just need something different, what do you do?
Well, I actually just launched a program for physical therapists to kind of create their own practice around this sort of mobile model. I'm also a private pay model or cash-based model, if you will. I think if people are sort of getting away from that cash-based, because then it just sounds a little weird. So I usually just say like a private pay model. So I just launched a program to help physical therapists to do that. We have like 23 people in our first cohort, and we go over everything, nuts to bolts. It's not just me. There's a lawyer within the program to give all the legal advice you can give, because I can't give legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. But we cover everything from your mindset to how you want your practice to be, who your clients are. A lot of times PTs have a hard time identifying who that sort of ideal client or clients are. And then what do you want your business to be like? What do you want your business to give? How do you want your business to give back? How do you want to be remembered? What is your legacy like? All of these things I think are important to think about when you start a business, because it'll help you kind of reverse engineer to where you want to be.
Nice.
And, it's just super practical, like you need this kind of insurance. This is what you need on a website. This is how you can promote. This is how you can market. This is how you can get publicity. It's the most practical thing I've ever, like, even as I go through it and as I'm creating, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I did this, and this. And it turns into also having just a really robust conversation amongst the people in it. And the amount of resources that has been shared in that group is just wild. But because there's all of this stuff when you run a business, you just think, oh, you just go out and treat your patients. Well, yeah, but you also need to be insured out the, what? You need to have an EMR system. You need to understand what you're going to do with your money. You need to understand how you're going to onboard your clients. So there's so much that goes into just setting the foundation. Forget about adding floors to the house, but just setting the foundation is a lot of work. And so what we're doing is trying to take the work out of it and just handing it to people and saying, here you go. This is who you need to contact. This is how you need to do this. You're set. Go and start your business.
Well, honestly, that's encouraging, because it seems to be, I won't use the word trend, but this is the direction that a lot of physical therapists are desiring to take. But talk to me a little bit about the private pay, because obviously are you on the Upper West Side? Where are you?
Well, I am. I'm on the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
Okay. So a very affluent area where people can obviously afford a lot of out-of-pocket expenses for their bodies and for physical therapy. But is there a way, let's say that you're in a community where you don't have such an affluent population, do you just provide them with a receipt and they do super bill? Do you recommend kind of a small group kind of? Is that, it's just kind of thinking like with personal training, of course, we were doing one-on-one for years and years and years. And now the model is more geared toward maybe 3, maybe 4 people, maybe 2 people in 1 hour, paying a reduced rate for the attention of the professional. Is there a model like that in physical therapy? So there's a couple of questions at you.
Yeah, I guess to answer the first question is I do give patients super bills if they ask for them, and then they turn them into their insurance and they get reimbursed. I have a patient that's basically paying a copay when she gets her reimbursement, right? So it's fine. And some people are like, I don't even want to bother with it. It's just too much work. I'll just pay for it out of pocket. Now, if you're in an area that's not as affluent, you just reduce your costs. So I wouldn't charge what I charge in New York City to people in my hometown in Pennsylvania, but I think you'd be surprised when you actually lay out, the traditional physical therapy. Like, I only see people once a week for the most, or maybe even once every other week. So I'm not seeing people 2 to 3 times a week. And so I think unless they're post-surgical, then that's a whole other story. But if I'm seeing someone for low back pain, then I might see them once a week, once every other week. And they improve, they get better because I'm seeing them for an hour plus. And so, yes, they're paying me, but I would say with most insurance plans now, you have a co-pay or a co-insurance that could be upwards to $50 or $60 a visit anyway. So if you're going in and you're going twice a week or 3 times a week to your physical therapist and your copay is $50, you're paying $100 to $150 a week for maybe, like you said, 20 minutes of one-on-one attention, right. 30 minutes of one-on-one attention, where depending on where you live, maybe you charge $120 and you're seeing them once a week or once every other week. So all of a sudden, it all, not only does it even out, but in some cases, you could be paying more with your copays going 2 to 3 times a week than you are coming to see a physical therapist who can spend a full hour plus with you.
That makes complete sense. And there's something else that you I won't say you alluded to, but the underpinnings of what you just said are telling me that the clients or patients that you have, that you're seeing once a week, granted, you're able to see them for an hour or so and be very effective in that time, but it also suggests that those type of patients are actually going to be more self-reliant, and they're going to be a lot more compliant to the program that you give them. So therefore, you don't need to see them more frequently. So It's actually helping to kind of propagate this ideal that we're all trying to do, where you're not the answer to their problems. You are the guide, providing them with answers that they can solve their own problems, compared to having somebody come in for 25 minutes, 3 days a week, and they're paying those copays and all that, and you're doing this and that to them, and they're feeling better. And so they have given away their own health care or their own wellness and put it upon your shoulders and made you responsible for it, so that the next time something happens, they're going to run right back to that physical therapist because they're the ones that healed them, so to speak, instead of what you're talking about, which I love, because you're giving people the power to help themselves. Hopefully. Compared to that other model. Well, that must be what you're seeing, right?
Yeah, and it is, and that's, that's the goal, right? You hope that you're giving people the tools that they can become self-reliant and that they can take control of their own health when they need to. And then also they know when to contact me, because they'll say, I tried XYZ and it didn't really, I don't think that really helps. So I just wanted to touch base with you. And sometimes that touch base is exactly that. It could be an email exchange and then it's done, oh, hey, try this, this, and this instead. Or sometimes it's like, I'm not really sure, and I'd feel best if we just had a quick, and now it could be like a quick telehealth visit. Let's see what's going on. Nice. So it might be a one-off visit that you see them for. So, I found that the more you can empower your patient, take control, and to like you said, be a guide, not a fixer, then I think you're going to have a very happy clientele.
I couldn't agree more. Now, you mentioned that you're insured more than just outside New York, or more than just inside New York. You're outside. And quickly, that's, I think, another one of the problems in my industry, is that we're not licensed practitioners, or we're not licensed trainers.
Yeah, you guys have a lot more freedom than we do.
Which is actually the bane of our industry to some degree, because now you've got these fly-by-nighters, you've got so-called professionals of varying levels of ability, of knowledge and experience, and so on. So the quackery within the industry is just through the roof. And so anyway, it would be really nice if those in my industry, if we could get some type of, whether it's a state or national licensure to accommodate that. But for you, you already have that in place. So where are you licensed? So the listening audience that outside New York.
Yeah. So right now I'm licensed in New York, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. Okay. And there's another thing that I should mention, is that in the United States, there is a physical therapy compact. So with some states, depending on, New York is not one of them, but there are, I think now, over 25 states, maybe 30, that are part of this compact. So if you're licensed in one, you're licensed in all of them. And New York is not one of them. But
really?
And neither is California. Shocker.
Yeah, well, there you have it.
There's a lot of other states that are part of this compact, so that if you're licensed in one, you're licensed in all of them. If you
Interesting.
fill out the proper paperwork in order to be licensed and all, which is
And I
awesome.
imagine fees will vary from one state to the next if you're trying to get licensed, Pennsylvania versus
Yeah.
Connecticut versus Rhode Island or whatever.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see. Well, you've got some pretty populous areas. I mean, you didn't choose South Dakota, Montana, or Wyoming, so your
Right.
customer base is a little bit higher. That's great. So, in regards to contact, obviously, let's just put out your podcast so people can
Right.
listen to the information that you have there.
Yeah. So the podcast is called Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart, and it's on anywhere you can listen to a podcast. Or you could check it out at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com. And I'm on various social media sites. So Twitter at Karen Litzy NYC, and on Instagram at Karen Litzy. It's all very easy. My website is KarenLitzy.com.
Wow, that's amazing, because parenthetically, the RockFit files are just the opposite. It's sick, poor, and stupid. So it's amazing. We're just parallel like that, only opposite universe. Yeah. No, all right. So yeah, KarenLitzy.com, New York physical therapist, and the podcast is Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart. Definitely give a listen. Karen, we're up against the clock here. I just want to take this time and say thank you for putting aside a little bit of your busy schedule, and because I know how busy it can be, especially in the New York time. And I just really appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. This was great.